Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. If you attend school here at Faith, one more week. We can do this. Just one more week, boys and girls. I'm sure the teachers are just as tired as the kids, if not more. But we're not here to talk about how many days are left of school. We are in 2 Samuel. Yeah, that's right, Peter. Depends how you count, though, because 2 are full, that's right, and 3 are halves. In 2 Samuel chapter 21, we've been talking about the life of David. We talked about how David had sin in his life and how it had consequences. And that theme keeps coming up throughout 2 Samuel. Absalom sinned and he had consequences. Sheba sinned and he had consequences. David sinned and he had consequences. Boys and girls, God sees everything. Not only the bad, though, boys and girls. He's not up there ready, to just thump you on the head when you do wrong, smack you in the face. God sees our good, too. And he's ready to reward us and bless us. He loves us. We're his children if we've asked him to save us. So, boys and girls, I don't want this study to be, so doom and gloom. Sin has consequences. But I want you to get the reality. Let that sink in. Sin is powerful, and it has consequences. Well, we're in chapter 21 today, and David is still king, and they have 3 years of famine. Well, boys and girls, what do you think? Yeah, that's right, Peter. We should probably tell the kids what famine means. Famine means there's no food, or very little food. The crops aren't growing for whatever reason, and they have very little food. Well, when there's a problem, what do you think King David's going to do? What should we do when there's a problem, boys and girls? That's right, we should pray. Well, David seeks the Lord. In verse number 1, it says, "Then there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year. And David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered, 'It is for Saul and his bloody house, because he slew the Gibeonites.'" So David seeks the Lord. Now, boys and girls, I was reading this, I was thinking, wow, it fits exactly what we've been studying. But there was a punishment for what Saul did. But is Saul even living right now? No. But his sin is still affecting the people. They've had 3 years of famine because of something that Saul did. Our sin often affects more people than we realize, and the effects of our sin last longer than we realize. Well, David calls up the Gibeonites, not on his phone, but it says, and the king called the Gibeonites. He brings the Gibeonites in. And he's like, what can we do? How can we make this right? How can we solve this? Verse number 2, "And the king called the Gibeonites and said unto them, Now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites. And the children of Israel had sworn unto them, and Saul sought to slay them in his zeal to the children of Israel and Judah. Wherefore David said unto the Gibeonites, What shall I do for you? And wherewith shall I make the atonement that we may bless the inheritance of the Lord?" He's like, what can we do? What can I do for you to appease what's been done, to take care of the problem that there's been? Well, in verse 6, the Gibeonites give an answer. And their answer is, "Let 7 men of his sons be delivered unto us, and we will hang them up unto the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, whom the Lord did choose." And the king said, "I will give them." They said, all right, give us 7 sons of Saul. We're going to hang them. We're going to kill them and to pay the punishment for what Saul had done, for the men that Saul had killed. Verse 7, "But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the Lord's oath that was between them, between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul." So Mephibosheth, the one that David has looked out for, Mephibosheth, the one who had the broken legs, who couldn't walk. He was unable to walk, and he got to eat at the king's table. The one who was Jonathan's son, the one who was precious to David. When David has to pick 7 sons or grandsons of Saul, he does not take Mephibosheth because of that promise that he had made to Jonathan. And David is going to keep that promise. So he does not send Mephibosheth. David does deliver 7 sons to them, and they do as they said. They hang them in the hill before the Lord, and they were put to death. Well, it goes on to tell us that the people mourn for the loss. They're upset by this loss. David takes the bones of Saul and Jonathan and gives them a proper burial. In verse number 12, it says, "And David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh Gilead, which had stolen them from the street of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them, when the Philistines had slain Saul in Gilboa. And he brought up from thence the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, and they gathered the bones of them that were hanged. And the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son buried they in the country of Benjamin and Zelah, in the sepulchre of Kish his father. And they performed all that the king commanded. And after that, God was entreated for the land." So the 7 sons are taken to the Gibeonites. They are killed. The people mourn because of this loss. And then David goes, he gets the bones of Saul, the bones of Jonathan, the bones of those 7 men, gives them a proper burial. And God says, okay, it's done. I'm pleased this has been taken care of. Sin has consequences. Consequences don't always come immediately. As we see, these 3 years of famine were a result of something Saul had done, and Saul had died a long time ago. And our sin affects others. Boys and girls, you've probably been in a classroom before, and the teacher has taken time off everybody's recess because people were talking, and maybe you weren't talking. Or the whole class has to put their head down because someone did something. Or boys and girls, mom and dad have had something special planned, and your brother or sister did something, and now the whole family doesn't get to go out to dinner. Our sin affects more than just us. It affects those around us. Boys and girls, I hope you can tell by what we've been studying the seriousness of sin. It's not something that God takes lightly. He took it so seriously that he sent his son to pay the penalty for our sin. Boys and girls, he died on the cross for us because we do wrong things. If you've never asked Jesus to save you from those sins, why not do it today? Why not ask Jesus to save you from your sins? Ask him to come into your heart because he can wash your heart as white as snow. Boys and girls, we hope that throughout this week, when you're tempted to do something wrong, that you'll remember that sin has consequences. They don't always come right away. You don't always get caught right away. But sin has consequences, and sin affects those around us. See you next